What if I told you that the difference between a TOEFL reading score of 18 and 28 isn't always bigger English? In many cases, it's a better strategy. Every year, thousands of students spend hours memorizing vocabulary and practicing passages, yet they keep making the same mistake. They treat every TOEFL reading question the same way. But TOEFL experts don't. They know that each question type has its own hidden pattern, shortcut, and solution. And once you understand those patterns, the reading section becomes faster, easier, and far less stressful. So if you're ready to stop guessing, start thinking like a TOEFL expert, and learn how to answer every question type with confidence, this episode is for you.
It is absolutely true. We see the heartbreak of this all the time. You know, the sheer volume of energy and late nights and financial resources that go into preparing for this specific exam, it's just staggering.
Yeah, people put their entire lives on hold for it.
They really do. But so much of that energy is unfortunately pointed in the wrong direction.
Well, welcome to the deep dive, everyone. We are thrilled to have you with us today. Our mission for this deep dive is ambitious, but entirely achievable.
Without a doubt.
We are going to completely decode the reading section of this major academic test. We are pulling back the curtain on how the test designers actually think, how they build their traps, and, giving you the blueprint to navigate the section with total confidence.
What is genuinely fascinating here is that the primary reason test takers find themselves stuck at a frustrating score, maybe hovering around that 18 or 19 mark, is rarely what they assume it is.
Right. They always blame their English, don't they?
Oh, constantly. If you survey a room full of people who just walked out of the testing center disappointed, you'll hear things like, my vocabulary just isn't advanced enough, or I am just a slow reader.
Sure.
Now, I'm not suggesting that vocabulary and reading speed do not matter. They absolutely do. But they are very rarely the root cause of the failure. The true culprit is a phenomenon we call a strategy mismatch.
A strategy mismatch. I really want to dig into that concept. It's like a basketball game.
I love this analogy.
Right. Imagine you have a point guard who has the ball. They are standing at the three-point line, but they are completely boxed in. Three massive defenders are surrounding them, arms up, blocking the hoop.
A terrible position to be in.
Exactly. Now, right under the basket, their teammate is standing completely wide open. But instead of passing the ball to the open teammate, the point guard tries to force a highly contested, off-balance three-pointer, and of course, it bounces off the rim.
Yeah, a total brick.
Now, does that missed shot make them a terrible athlete? Does it mean they don't know how to play basketball?
Not at all. I mean, it just means they made a catastrophic decision in that specific fraction of a second. They assess the scenario in front of them and apply the entirely wrong tool to solve the problem.
Right. And that feels completely analogous to what happens in the reading section. You can have incredibly high-level English skills.
You really can.
You can be able to hold a conversation, watch movies without subtitles, and read novels. But if you look at a specific question type on this test and choose the wrong cognitive strategy to answer it well, you are going to lose points that you could have easily secured.
That is the core of it. It's all about applying the correct tool from your toolbox to the specific problem sitting on the screen in front of you.
But wait, I have to challenge this premise for a second. At the end of the day, this is quite literally called a reading comprehension test, isn't it?
That is what it says on the tin, yes.
Shouldn't the ultimate foolproof solution just be learning to read faster, building an encyclopedic vocabulary, and just understanding the text? If I comprehend every single word on the screen, I'm guaranteed a perfect score, right?
That is the grand illusion of the reading test. And honestly, it is the trap that catches so many high-level English speakers.
Oh, really? So being too good at English can hurt you?
In a way, yes. The test makers are actually presenting you with a highly sophisticated locating information test that is merely wearing the disguise of a traditional reading comprehension test.
Wow. Locating information, that's a huge shift in perspective.
It is. The goal they are assessing is not your ability to read at lightning speed. The goal is to see if you can read smarter.
Right.
When you look at the top scores, the ones hitting the 28, 29, or even perfect 30 marks, they are not necessarily speed readers. They don't process words faster than you do.
So what are they doing differently?
What they possess is a surgical understanding of what to read, when to skip reading altogether, and specifically what visual data they are hunting for when they encounter each of the unique question types.
Which brings us to the bad habits. Because before we can build the correct mental frameworks, we really have to tear down the faulty ones, don't we?
We absolutely do. There is a lot of unlearning that needs to happen.
There are 4 major chronic mistakes that test takers make over and over again. Let's start with mistake number 1. The urge to read every single word of the passage before even glancing at the first question.
Yeah, doing this is a massive drain on your most precious and finite resource in that room, which is the clock.
Time is always the enemy.
Always. As we established, this is a locating information test. You are not there to appreciate the prose. You do not need to memorize a dense 700-word academic essay on the migratory patterns of monarch butterflies so you can write a thesis on it later.
You just need the points.
Right. You need to find specific, granular data points quickly. Reading the entire passage word for word up front is like trying to memorize every street name, alleyway, and stoplight on an entire city map before you order a taxi.
That is a great way to put it.
You don't need the whole map. You just need the specific route to your specific destination.
That makes total sense, but it goes against everything we are taught in school. We are taught to read the chapter, then take the quiz.
Which is why it's such a hard habit to break.
But here, that instinct is a total liability, and that leads directly into mistake number 2, the perfectionism trap. Trying to understand everything perfectly.
It's a brilliant psychological trap by design. Academic texts are intentionally dense. They are convoluted. They use passive voice. They dive into abstract theory.
You're trying to intimidate you.
Basically, yes. You are absolutely not expected to have 100% crystal clear comprehension of the text to answer the questions correctly. Expert test takers will routinely answer complex questions perfectly without fully grasping the deeper scientific or historical nuances of certain paragraphs.
So they just let it go.
They recognize that total comprehension is a luxury. It's a luxury they do not need, and more importantly, one they cannot afford on a 35-minute timer.
I mean, there is something incredibly freeing about giving yourself permission to not understand something, to look at a massive, confusing paragraph about quantum mechanics and say, I don't fully get this, but I know how to find the answer to question 4.
It completely shifts the power dynamic. You take control back from the test.
Mistake number 3 is another time killer, spending too much time agonizing over the hardest questions.
This comes down to pure, brutal test economics. In this section, every single standard question holds the exact same base value of 1 point.
So the impossibly hard question isn't worth double.
Nope. A question that feels like it was written in a different language, a question that completely breaks your brain, is not worth more points than a question you find incredibly obvious. So, spending 4 minutes staring at one brutal question is a terrible return on your time investment.
That's agonizing, though.
It is, but in that same 4-minute window, you could have confidently scanned, located, and correctly answered 3 easier questions later in the section.
It's the ultimate sunk cost fallacy. You think, I've already started this for 2 minutes, I have to figure it out now, or that time was wasted.
And that's how people run out of time.
In reality, you are just throwing good time after bad. You have to learn to cut your losses, guess, and move on. Finally, mistake number 4, choosing answers that simply sound right.
Oh, this is where the test designers really earn their paychecks. The wrong answer choices, the distractors, are meticulously crafted to sound incredibly academic, authoritative, and convincing.
They sound like real facts.
Very much so. They use sophisticated vocabulary that feels right at home in a university lecture. They will even reuse specific words that appeared in the passage to give you a false sense of familiarity.
Sneaky.
Very. If you rely on your gut feeling, or if you bring in your own outside knowledge of the topic, you will walk right into these traps. You have to evaluate the answers based strictly mathematically on the text provided, ignoring how smart an option sounds.
So we know the traps to avoid. Let's look at the battlefield itself. Let's break down the physical and structural parameters of what you will actually face when you sit down at that computer.
It's good to know the terrain.
Right. Currently, you are looking at 2 separate academic passages. Each passage is roughly 700 words long. You will face 10 questions per passage, making 20 questions in total. And you have a strict, unforgiving 35 minutes to complete the entire section.
To give you some context on why those numbers matter, the reading section is scored on a scale from 0 to 30.
Okay, what's a good score?
Well, if you are aiming for standard graduate programs, most universities look for a minimum reading score somewhere between 20 and 22. However, if you are looking at highly competitive programs, Ivy League schools, top-tier medical or engineering programs, you're really looking at a requirement of 24 or higher.
That's hitting up there.
It is. Those elite scores, The 27s up to the perfect 30s are considered exceptional and are typically achieved by fewer than 10% of test takers. And mathematically, you have roughly 17 and a half minutes to navigate each passage, and it's 10 questions.
And the text itself is a unique beast. You aren't reading a blog post or a suspense novel. It's a very specific flavor of English.
Highly formal, highly academic English. You are going to encounter long, winding sentences that are packed with multiple dependent clauses.
And a lot of jargon, right?
Tons of it. You'll see discipline-specific vocabulary words from geology, biology, art, history, economics. You will find abstract concepts explained through incredibly dense prose. There's a heavy use of cause and effect structures, which can get super tangled.
I get a headache just thinking about it.
And perhaps most frustratingly, there's a lot of information presented indirectly using the passive voice, or what we call hedging language.
Hedging language? What's that?
It's words like suggests, indicates, postulates, or might. They rarely say X caused Y. They say, it has been suggested that X might have been a contributing factor to the emergence of Y.
Oh, wow. It is exhausting just listening to that sentence. So, to navigate this incredibly dense academic jungle without running out of time, you need to be able to instantly recognize the specific species of questions you are encountering.
Spot on. If you know what you are looking at, you know specifically how to attack it.
Which brings us to the core of our deep dive today, breaking down the 10 distinct question types. We are going to start with a category we can call the direct search.
The direct search questions form the bedrock of your score. They make up a significant portion of the test, and they rely entirely on your ability to locate specific tangible information that is explicitly stated somewhere in the text.
No guessing required.
None at all.
Question type 1 is factual information. This seems like the most straightforward one on the board.
It is straightforward, provided you don't fall for the illusions. These questions are asking you to find specific data points that are directly, undeniably stated in the passage.
How do you spot them?
You can almost always recognize them by the signal phrases in the prompt, according to the passage. Or, the author states that, or it is indicated in paragraph 2 that. When you see that phrase, according to the passage, your brain should immediately register the answer is sitting in black and white text. It is not hidden.
It's a game of hide and seek, and the answer is waiting to be found. Let's make this concrete. Imagine a passage about the ancient Roman city of Pompeii.
A classic topic.
The text on the screen says, the ancient city of Pompeii was buried under several meters of volcanic ash following the catastrophic eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CB. This sudden covering of ash preserved the city remarkably well, sealing it off from air and moisture and allowing modern archaeologists to study Roman daily life in extraordinary detail.
A dense but very clear piece of academic text.
Now, the factual information question pops up and asks, according to the passage, why is Pompeii significant for modern archaeologists? Let's look at the 4 options the test makers provide.
Let's hear them.
Option A, because it was the largest and wealthiest Roman city. Option B, because its sudden preservation allows for detailed study of Roman daily life. Option C, because it was tragically destroyed by a massive earthquake. Option D, because it contains the world's most well-preserved Roman artwork.
This is a masterful example of how test designers construct their traps. Let's look at option C, first destroyed by a massive earthquake.
Okay, what's wrong with C?
This is a classic trap designed to catch the test taker who is panicking and reading too fast. The passage clearly states it was an eruption of a volcano, Mount Vesuvius, not an earthquake. So option C is factually, objectively wrong based on the text.
Right, that one is easy to eliminate if you are actually paying attention. But what about option A, that it was the largest Roman city? Or option D, about the well-preserved Roman artwork? Those feel incredibly tempting.
Those are what we call plausible traps, and they are incredibly dangerous. They are dangerous because they might actually be true in the real world.
Oh, I see.
If you have watched a documentary about Pompeii on the History Channel, you know that the artwork and the frescoes are incredibly famous. So your brain sees the word artwork, it associates it with your existing knowledge of Pompeii, and you feel a rush of confidence. You think, yes, I know this.
But that's a mistake.
A massive one. Remember, the cardinal rule of this test, you must never ever use outside knowledge. You are operating in a closed universe. The universe consists only of the 700 words on the screen.
That's a great rule to remember.
The text does not say it was the largest city, and it does not explicitly mention artwork. It mentions Roman daily life. Therefore, option B, because its preservation allows for detailed study of Roman life, is the only answer that is directly, undeniably stated in the provided text.
It really is an exercise in supreme cognitive discipline. You have to actively shut off your own brain, forget everything you know about the topic, and only use the brain of the author. Let's move to question type 2, negative factual information. These are the ones that make test takers groan.
Oh, for good reason. They are essentially the exact opposite of the first type.
How so?
Instead of asking what is stated, they are asking what is not stated or what is true, except for one single option. You will always recognize them because they feature the words not or except printed in bold capital letters to ensure you don't miss the negative condition.
The strategy here relies on the elimination technique, right?
It does.
You have to take the 4 answer choices, verify them one by one against the passage, and actively eliminate the 3 that are actually true. The one left standing, the one you cannot verify, or the one that directly contradicts the text is your answer. Now hold on. Verifying 3 separate distinct facts scattered across a 700-word passage sounds like an absolute nightmare for time management.
It's a massive time sink, and you are totally right to be wary of it. This raises a crucial point about how you budget your 35 minutes.
You have to plan for it.
You do. You have to accept that negative factual questions are going to take longer. You cannot expect to answer them in 45 seconds. You should mentally budget about 90 seconds, maybe even a little more, for these specific questions.
Let's visualize this. Say you have a passage about the environmental impacts of deforestation. The question asks, according to paragraph 3, all of the following are negative effects of deforestation, except...
You have to go hunting. You look at option A, which says accelerated soil erosion. You go back to paragraph 3, you scan for the word soil or erosion, you find the sentence that mentions it, and you physically cross out option A on your mental checklist.
Okay, so A is gone.
Then you look at option B, dramatic loss of biodiversity. You scan, you find the sentence discussing animal habitat, you cross out B. You do this systematically until you find the one option, say, option C, increased global oxygen levels, that simply isn't in the text.
Or in that case, it just completely contradicts the science in the text.
Right. It's a process of sheer stubborn elimination.
Let's look at question type 5 vocabulary questions. Now, when people hear vocabulary tests, they think of middle school spelling bees or flashcards with dictionary definitions. But this is different, isn't it?
Very different. They are asking for the meaning of a word in context.
In context.
That phrase, in context, is the golden key that unlocks this question type. The test makers will frequently highlight a word that has multiple varied meanings in the English language. They do not care if you know the primary dictionary definition.
So what do they care about?
They want to know if you can deduce how that specific word is being utilized in the architecture of this specific sentence.
There are some fantastic tactical approaches here. The most immediate one is the substitution test. You literally take the 4 answer choices provided, mentally plug them into the original sentence and place the highlighted word, and ask yourself which one makes logical, grammatical sense.
It is highly effective because wrong answers will often create a sentence that sounds absurd or breaks the grammar of the clause.
That's a great trick.
Another powerful strategy is looking for definitions built right into the context itself. Academic writers, despite their dense prose, are usually quite considerate. If they introduce a highly technical term or a complex concept, they will very often define it for the reader right there in the same sentence or the immediate next sentence.
You just have to know what to look for.
Exactly. You just have to be observant enough to look for punctuation clues, like dashes, colons, commas, or transitional phrases like, in other words, that is to say, or which is defined as.
And then there's the strategy of using contrast clues. You are looking for pivot words like however, but, although, or unlike.
Right. Pivots are huge.
If you read a sentence that says, unlike the incredibly vibrant and colorful plumage of tropical birds, the feathers of this particular species are completely drab. Even if you have never seen the word drab in your life, the pivot word unlike gives you the answer. It tells you that drab must mean the absolute opposite of vibrant and colorful. It must mean dull or boring.
You hit the nail on the head. You are using the structure of the sentence to solve the vocabulary equation.
It's like a math problem with words.
It really is. But of course, there are times when the context clues are ambiguous, or the substitution test leaves you with 2 plausible options. That is when we have to fall back on a deeper structural understanding of the English language.
Getting into the roots.
Yes. This means diving into Greek and Latin roots, prefixes, and suffixes. Understanding these building blocks can be an absolute lifesaver under pressure.
I find this stuff endlessly fascinating. It's like hacking the English language. Let's explore some of these foundational roots that pop up constantly in academic texts. You have bio, which means life, like in biology or biography. Geo means earth, like geography or geology. Auto means self, like autonomous or autobiography.
Absolutely. And understanding prefixes regarding time and placement is critical. Pre, meaning before, as in preliminary or prehistoric. Post, meaning after, as in postpone or post-industrial. Anti, meaning against or opposite, like antibiotic or antipathy.
How does that actually help on the test, though?
Consider this: if you encounter a massive, intimidating word you don't recognize, but you see it starts with anti, you immediately know it involves some form of opposition, resistance, or contrast. That single piece of structural knowledge might be enough for you to eliminate two completely incorrect answer choices that suggest agreement or growth.
That is so smart. Let's talk about the academic word list, the AWL. If someone is studying for this test, they shouldn't just be reading the dictionary. They need to focus on this specific list, don't they?
The AWL is a game changer. These are not the hyper-specific science or history terms. You don't need to memorize the names of different types of igneous rocks.
Thank goodness.
The AWL consists of the structural, functional words of academic writing. These are the words that hold the arguments together. Words like analyze, constitute, significant, underlying, concept, evaluate, methodology.
Let's break a couple of those down. Take constitute. In everyday conversation, we don't use that word much, but in a reading passage, a sentence might say, these three elements constitute the core of the theory. If you don't know that constitute means make up or form, you lose the entire meaning of the paragraph.
Or consider the word ambiguous, an incredibly common academic word. It means having more than one possible meaning or being unclear.
Oh, I've seen that trip people up.
All the time. If an author writes, the results of the preliminary study were ambiguous, and you think ambiguous means successful, you will get every subsequent question about that study wrong. Mastering the AWL ensures you understand the framework of the passage, even if the specific topic is unfamiliar.
Let's round out the direct search category with question type 6 reference questions. These questions are purely mechanical. They are all about identifying what specific pronouns are pointing to. You will see a highlighted word like it, they, this, these, or which, and you have to identify the original noun.
In complex academic writing, authors use pronouns constantly. If they didn't, the text would sound incredibly repetitive and robotic.
It would be unreadable.
But the danger for the reader is losing the thread. If an author uses the word they in the fourth sentence of a paragraph, and you, as the reader, lose track of what they refers to, the logical flow of the entire paragraph shatters.
We have a great example to illustrate this. Imagine a text about marine biology. The sentence reads, researchers recently discovered a fascinating new species of deep-sea fish in the Mariana Trench. They reported their groundbreaking findings in a major scientific journal. The question simply asks, what does the highlighted word they refer to?
The tactical approach here involves two steps: proximity and grammatical agreement.
Okay, walk us through it.
First, you look backward. You look at the nouns that immediately precede the highlighted pronoun. Then you check for gender and number agreement. The pronoun they is plural. It refers to multiple things or people, so you scan backward for plural nouns. In our sentence, we have researchers, we have species, which can be plural, and we have fish, which can also be plural.
So grammatically, they could technically refer to the fish, but this is where you use the substitution test again. Let's plug the fish into the second sentence. The deep-sea fish reported their groundbreaking findings in a major scientific journal.
Unless these are incredibly advanced, scientifically literate fish, that makes no logical sense.
Yeah, writing papers and getting published.
Exactly. The only plural noun that fits logically and grammatically is researchers. Therefore, they refers to the researchers. It seems simple in isolation, but when you are dealing with a 40-word sentence with 3 different clauses, tracking those pronouns becomes a vital survival skill.
So finding explicitly stated facts, defining words through context, and tracking pronouns, that is the foundation. That is step 1. But the test designers are not content to just test your ability to hunt and peck for data.
No, they want to push you further.
They want to know if you can understand the unsaid. They want to know if you can read between the lines.
This is a major threshold for test takers. We are transitioning from merely locating explicit information to actually interpreting implicit information. We are moving into the realm of deeper, critical comprehension.
Let's dive into Section 3, reading between the lines. And we have to start with the question type that induces the most anxiety question. Type 3, the inference question. The very word inference terrifies people. They think it means they have to guess what the author was secretly thinking.
And that misconception is accurately why people lose points here. The biggest myth in test prep is that inference means guessing or using your intuition.
But it doesn't.
It absolutely does not. In the strict, unyielding context of a standardized reading test, an inference is a logical conclusion that must be mathematically true based strictly on the concrete evidence provided in the passage. There is no intuition involved.
I want to use a detective analogy here because it perfectly frames the mindset you need. Think about a homicide detective arriving at a crime scene. The detective was not there when the crime happened. They did not see the event. They are not going to just guess who did it based on a gut feeling.
Of course not. That would be terrible police work.
Right. What do? They look at the evidence, they see a smashed window, they see muddy boot prints on the carpet, and they see that the expensive television is missing from the wall. From that hard, undeniable evidence, they conclude that a burglary occurred. They are drawing a logical conclusion based entirely on facts. They aren't guessing it was a ghost or an alien abduction.
That analogy is perfect. When you face an inference question, you are that detective. You are looking for the answer choice that the textual evidence strongly, logically demands.
You're just connecting the dots.
Yes.
Yeah.
You are not looking for an answer that might be true in the real world or an answer that sounds like a smart assumption. You are looking for the answer that is logically derived from connecting the dots provided by the author.
Let's look at an example to see how this works in practice. Imagine a passage discussing early human survival. The text says, early human tribes who inhabited the harsh environments of the Arctic developed sophisticated methods of storing their surplus meat beneath the permafrost, where temperatures remained consistently below freezing year-round.
Okay, let's lay out the evidence like a detective.
The question asks, what can be inferred from the passage about the role of permafrost for early humans?
Fact 1, they stored meat beneath the permafrost. Fact 2, the permafrost temperatures were consistently below freezing year-round. What happens when you put meat in a below-freezing environment?
It doesn't rot. It is preserved.
Right. The logical conclusion, the inference, is that the permafrost functioned as a natural refrigerator for long-term food preservation. The author never explicitly wrote the sentence, the permafrost was a natural refrigerator. But that conclusion is the only logical outcome of the connected facts.
The wrong answers here are incredibly seductive because they often take the evidence and just stretch it a little too far. A classic distractor for this question might be, early humans invented the concept of refrigeration.
Yes, that is a massive logical leap. Utilizing a naturally freezing environment is not the same as inventing the concept of refrigeration.
It sounds smart, but it's wrong.
It goes way beyond the evidence. You have to stay fiercely grounded in the text. You can only go one logical step past the written word, no further.
Okay, let's unpack question type 4 rhetorical purpose questions. This one requires a complete shift in perspective. It's not asking what the text says. It's asking why the author decided to put that specific piece of text in that specific place.
This is a crucial concept for academic reading. Every single sentence, every single statistic, every single historical example in an academic essay is there for a calculated reason.
They don't just write to fill space.
No, authors are architects. They don't just throw bricks into a pile, they place them intentionally to build a wall. A rhetorical purpose question asks you to identify the structural function of that brick.
Like, are they providing an example to clarify a theory?
Or are they contrasting two opposing ideas? Are they refuting a popular counterargument? Are they introducing a new topic?
The strategy to solve this is highly reliable. You find the highlighted word or phrase, but you do not just stare at it. You must read one complete sentence before the highlighted detail and one complete sentence after it. The secret is in the surroundings.
The surrounding context always reveals the structural purpose. Academic writing follows predictable patterns. A very common pattern is that an author will make a broad, abstract claim and then follow it immediately with a specific, tangible example to help the reader visualize it.
So if the question asks, why does the author mention the Amazon River Basin in paragraph 2? You look at the preceding sentence.
Right. If the preceding sentence says, equatorial regions boast highly diverse and complex ecosystems, the purpose of mentioning the Amazon River Basin is to provide a specific illustration of that abstract concept.
And there is a fantastic shortcut when you are looking at the answer choices. The correct answers for rhetorical purpose questions almost always start with specific action verbs.
I love this trick.
You want to look for phrases like to illustrate, to contrast, to support, to explain, or to emphasize. If an answer choice starts with to illustrate, you just ask yourself, does the Amazon River Basin actually illustrate the point made in the sentence right before it? If yes, you have your answer.
It forces you to approach reading mechanically, which is incredibly helpful when you are under the stress of a ticking clock. You stop worrying about the deeper meaning of the Amazon and just look at its function in the paragraph.
Moving on to question type 7 sentence simplification. I know a lot of people struggle with this one. This is where you are confronted with a massive, highlighted, multi-clause monster of a sentence that takes up half the screen, and you have to choose the option that best strips it down to its core, essential meaning.
Academic writers, for better or worse, love packing their sentences with extra information. They use dependent clauses, conditional statements, parenthetical asides, and extensive lists.
It's just a wall of text.
Your job is to take a mental machete to that sentence. You have to chop away all the decorative underbrush, all the adjectives and minor conditions, until you find the solid trunk of the tree, the main subject, the main verb, and the primary claim.
Let's build a monster sentence and tear it down. Imagine the text says, although early attempts at human flight were largely disastrous and unsuccessful due to a fundamental lack of lightweight, durable materials, the Wright brothers' historic breakthrough at Kitty Hawk in 1903 conclusively demonstrated that powered, sustained human flight was indeed achievable.
That sentence is incredibly dense. It has a contrast clause with although, it has a cause and effect relationship with due to, and it has a main event.
So how do we machete this?
When we apply the machete and simplify it, we ask 3 fundamental questions. Who did what? What changed? What was the result?
Okay, let's answer those. Who did what? The Wright brothers made a breakthrough. What was the result? They proved that powered flight was possible. What is the overarching context? Earlier attempts by other people had failed.
So what's the final core meaning?
The core simplified meaning is, despite earlier failures by others, the Wright brothers successfully proved that human flight was possible.
When you look at the incorrect answer choices for sentence simplification questions, they typically rely on 3 specific tricks. First, they might omit crucial information, for instance. An answer choice might leave out the fact that earlier attempts failed, which loses the contrast of the original sentence.
What's the second trick?
Second, they might change the relationship between the facts, like saying the Wright brothers failed because they lacked lightweight materials, which completely reverses the meaning.
Oh, wow, that completely flips it.
Or third, they might add unstated facts, saying the Wright brothers invented lightweight materials. You are looking for the option that retains the absolute essential meaning without altering the relationships between the ideas.
So we have mastered finding facts, deducing meanings, inferring conclusions, and simplifying complex sentences. Now, how do we piece the whole passage together? How do we see the forest instead of just the trees?
This brings us to the highest value, most structurally demanding questions on the test.
Let's explore Section 4, the high-stakes architects.
We refer to them as the high-stakes architects because these questions do not just test your understanding of a single sentence or a single paragraph. They test your comprehensive grasp of how the entire passage was constructed.
Question type 8 is the insert text question. Visually, this is the most distinct question on the test. You are given a brand new sentence, and inside the reading passage, you will see 4 black squares placed between various sentences. You have to decide which of those 4 squares is the most logical place to drop the new sentence.
This question is a pure test of your understanding of cohesion.
Cohesion, like how it sticks together.
Yes, cohesion is the invisible glue that holds academic writing together. Paragraphs are not random collections of thoughts. They follow a predictable, logical flow. A topic sentence introduces a broad idea. Supporting sentences provide specific evidence or examples, and a concluding sentence wraps up the thought or transitions to the next paragraph.
So you can't just shove it in anywhere.
Exactly. The sentence you need to insert must snap into this existing framework seamlessly. It cannot disrupt the flow.
To do this, you are hunting for cohesion clues, right? You are looking for pronouns and transition words.
Without a doubt. You have to establish what we call anchors. You look at the new sentence you are trying to insert. If that sentence starts with the transition word furthermore, you instantly know it must be adding additional information to a point that was just made.
Oh, that makes it so much easier.
If the new sentence says, this aggressive territorial behavior is common in the species, the phrase, this aggressive territorial behavior, is your anchor. It means that the sentence immediately preceding the insertion point must describe an animal acting aggressively.
You find the anchor in the new sentence, and you scan the passage for the exact place where that anchor attaches.
You've got it.
And the tactical pro tip here is to take the time to mentally test the insertion point. Don't just drop it in and move on. Read the sentence before the square, read the new sentence, and then read the sentence after the square. If the ideas jump around, if it feels disjointed or awkward, it is in the wrong place. The transition should read as smoothly as if the sentence had always been there.
Exactly. It should feel completely invisible.
Now we arrive at the heavy hitter, the monster at the end of the test. Question type 9, the prose summary. This question is worth 2 points, not 1.
That's the big one.
You are given an introductory sentence that states the main theme of the passage. You are then given 6 answer choices, and you have to choose the 3 major statements that best support that main theme. Now, I have to be honest, this question feels incredibly subjective.
It definitely feels that way to a lot of people.
When the clock is ticking down to the final 2 minutes and you're sweating, how do you objectively tell the difference between a major idea and a minor detail?
It is the most common frustration test takers experience, and the anxiety is real. But there is an objective analytical framework you can use. You have to evaluate the weight of the information.
The weight.
Yes. A major idea carries weight. It covers a large portion of the passage. It might be the core theme of an entire paragraph, or it might be a concept that is introduced and then developed over several paragraphs. It connects directly and obviously back to the overall thesis of the essay.
Okay, and a minor detail.
A minor detail, on the other hand, is lightweight. It might only be mentioned once in passing. It is almost always a specific date, a specific person's name, a single statistical figure, or a highly specific example used merely to prop up a larger idea.
Okay, let's use a historical example. Let's say the entire reading passage is about the complex causes of the French Revolution. A major idea, a correct answer choice, might be severe economic inequality and a regressive tax system fueled widespread anger among the lower classes.
That is a massive concept that probably took up 2 paragraphs to explain.
Right. A minor detail would be, in 1789, the price of a standard loaf of bread in Paris reached a record high.
Spot on. The bread price is a fascinating historical fact, and the author used it to illustrate the economic suffering. But it is just an example. It is a brick, not the wall.
So even if it's true, it's the wrong answer.
Yes. The trap here, and it is a devious, devastating trap, is that the test makers will deliberately include an answer choice that is factually true according to the text. It might be that fact about the bread.
And people pick it because they remember reading it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As a test taker, you read it, you remember reading it in paragraph 3, you verify that it is true, and you proudly select it. But you fail to ask yourself the critical question, is this a major supporting idea or just a true detail? A true statement is not always a major idea. You have to evaluate the structural importance of the information, not just its factual accuracy.
That is a critical distinction that saves points. True does not equal major. Finally, we have question type 10, fill in a table. This one can actually be worth up to 3 points.
3 points is huge on a reading section.
You are given 2 or 3 categories, and you have a list of characteristics or data points that you have to sort into the correct columns.
This question type typically only appears when the reading passage is heavily focused on comparing and contrasting 2 distinct subjects, for example. Comparing 2 different economic theories, distinguishing between 2 types of biological ecosystems, or contrasting 2 historical art movements.
What's the best way to handle it?
The strategy here relies on a technique called mental tagging that you must employ during your initial skim of the passage.
Mental tagging. So as I'm reading through the text, if the passage is comparing predators and prey, every time I encounter a specific trait or behavior, I am quietly categorizing it in my head. I read about forward-facing eyes. I mentally tag it predator. I read about wide peripheral vision. I mentally tag it prey.
Yes, you are actively organizing the data into mental buckets as you consume it. So when you finally reach the table question at the end, you aren't starting from scratch.
You just drop them in the buckets.
You verify each answer choice against the text and drop it into the correct bucket. But you must beware of the distractor items. The test makers will always include options in the list that are either completely fabricated and never mentioned in the text, or they belong to a third category that isn't even listed in the table.
Oh, that's mean.
Do not feel compelled to find a home for every single option provided. Some of them belong in the trash.
All right, knowing the deep theory behind all 10 question types is amazing. It is empowering. But let's be real, theory is useless if you can't execute it when the timer actually starts counting down. We need to synthesize all of this knowledge into real-time gameplay. Let's move into Section 5, the Universal Playbook and Real-Time Application.
This is where we discuss the physical and cognitive mechanics of actually taking the test. And the two most vital skills you must master are skimming and scanning.
Aren't those the same thing?
It is imperative that test takers understand that these are two completely different physiological and cognitive processes.
Let's break the difference down. Skimming is the very first thing you do when the passage appears on the screen, right?
Yes. You spend a strict 3 to 4 minutes getting a structural map of the text. You are reading the title. You are reading the first sentence of each paragraph, the topic sentences, and you are reading the last sentence of each paragraph.
And ignoring the middle.
You are actively choosing not to read every word in the middle. You are just looking at the architecture to see how the argument flows. Skimming gives you the landscape. It tells you where the mountains are and where the rivers are.
Okay, so then what is scanning?
Scanning, on the other hand, is a highly targeted hunting mission. You only use scanning when you are actively trying to answer a specific question.
Like looking for a name or a date.
Yes, exactly. You read the question. You identify a unique keyword, let's say the phrase blue whales, and then you let your eyes jump rapidly down the text. You are not reading for meaning. You are visually sweeping the screen, ignoring all other words until your eyes lock onto the visual shape of the words blue whales. Then, and only then, do you stop scanning and start reading that specific sentence carefully for comprehension.
It is about controlling your eye movements. And because the time management is so brutal, mastering this toggle between skimming and scanning is essential. Let's map out that 35-minute clock. You have roughly 17 and a half minutes per passage. How do we divide that up?
The optimal breakdown looks like this. You spend your first 3 to 4 minutes doing that architectural skim. Get the map in your head. Then you spend about 8 to 9 minutes answering the bulk of the standard questions, usually questions 1 through 7.
And the rest of the time?
Finally, you must fiercely reserve the last 4 to 5 minutes for those high-value, time-consuming structural questions at the end, like the prose summary or the fill-in table.
What about the scratch paper? They give us paper and a pencil. Should we be outlining the whole passage?
Absolutely not. Do not use your scratch paper for dictation. If you try to write down everything you read, you will run out of time before you reach question 5.
So what should we write down?
Your notes must be incredibly sparse and strategic. We are talking about a single abbreviated phrase to note the main idea of a paragraph. If it is a comparison passage, maybe you draw a quick T-chart to track which category is which. Your notes are meant to be a quick compass to point you back to the right paragraph, not a transcript of the essay.
I love that phrase, a compass, not a transcript. Okay, let's put this playbook to the test. Let's do a live, real-time role play. We've got to walk through a mini passage right now and apply these strategies as if the clock is ticking. I will be the stressed-out test taker, and you be the expert guiding my thought process.
Let's do it. Take a deep breath and look at the text.
Okay, here is the text on the screen. Coral reefs, often called the rainforests of the sea, support approximately 25% of all marine species, despite covering less than 1% of the ocean floor. Their remarkable biodiversity is primarily sustained by a symbiotic relationship between corals and microscopic algae called zooxanthellae. These algae live within the coral's tissues, providing up to 90% of the coral's energy through photosynthesis. In return, the coral provides the algae with nutrients and a protected environment. However, rising ocean temperatures pose a critical threat. When water becomes too warm, corals expel their zooxanthellae in a process known as coral bleaching. Without the algae, the coral loses both its vibrant color and its primary energy source. If the temperature stress is prolonged, the coral will inevitably die. Scientists estimate that, at current rates of warming, up to 90% of the world's coral reefs could experience bleaching events annually by 2050.
Excellent. Now, question 1 appears on your screen. It is a factual information question. It asks, according to the passage, what is the primary function of zooxanthellae for coral reefs? The options are A, to protect the coral from predators, B, to provide energy through photosynthesis, C, to create vibrant color patterns for the reef, or D, to regulate local ocean temperatures. Walk me through your internal monologue.
Okay, the clock is ticking. I see the phrase, according to the passage, so I know the answer is explicitly stated. No guessing. My keyword to scan for is zooxanthellae. I scan the text, my eyes jumping over the first sentence. Boom, there it is in sentence 2. I read that sentence and the next one carefully. These algae live within the coral's tissues, providing up to 90% of the coral's energy through photosynthesis. Now I look at the option.
What jumps out at you?
Well, option C mentions creating color patterns. I remember seeing the word color further down in the text. Let me look. Yeah, it says it loses both its vibrant color. So the algae must create the color. I'm going to pick option C.
Stop right there. This is accurately where test takers lose points.
Yeah.
You found a true fact. The algae does contribute to the color, but you failed to answer the specific question asked. Read the prompt again. What word is modifying the word function?
Primary. It asks for the primary function.
Yes. Does the text say color is the primary function?
No. It says the algae provides up to 90% of the coral's energy. 90% is definitely the primary function. So the answer must be B, to provide energy through photosynthesis. Wow. The color option was a total trap. I saw a matching word and almost fell for it.
You experienced the trap in real time. You have to rely on the complete text, not just word association. Let's look at question 2. This is an inference question. What can be inferred about a coral reef that has experienced prolonged, uninterrupted bleaching?
Okay, inference. I need to be the detective. I'm not guessing. I'm looking for a logical mathematical conclusion based on evidence. Let me scan for the keywords prolonged bleaching or temperature stress. Ah, here it is near the end. If the temperature stress is prolonged, the coral will inevitably die.
So what's your answer?
Wait a minute. This is supposed to be an inference question, but the text literally just hands me the answer. The conclusion is that it will die. That feels too easy. Am I missing a trick?
You are not missing a trick. You are highlighting a crucial point about test anxiety. Sometimes the test makers use the word inferred simply to mean what logical outcome is presented. Test takers panic when they see the word infer. They think it has to be a riddle. They start looking for hidden, complex meanings when the straightforward, logical answer is staring them right in the face. Don't overcomplicate it. Trust the evidence.
That is a huge relief. Let's move to question 3, a vocabulary question. The word symbiotic in paragraph 1 is closest in meaning to. The options are A, highly competitive, B, mutually beneficial, C, strictly temporary, or D, microscopic.
Now let's pretend you have never encountered the word symbiotic in your life. You don't know the Greek roots. How do you solve this using the text?
I have to use context clues. I look at the sentence containing the word, and then I look at the surrounding sentences. The sentence right after says the algae provide 90% of the energy. The sentence after that says, in return, the coral provides the algae with nutrients and a protected environment.
So what does that tell you about the relationship?
Well, the algae gives an energy, the coral gives protection, they are helping each other out, they are both gaining something. Therefore, it cannot be competitive. It has to be mutually beneficial. The substitution test works perfectly here.
You deduced the meaning flawlessly from the surrounding architecture. Last one in our role play. Question 4 is a rhetorical purpose question. Why does the author refer to coral reefs as the rainforests of the sea in the opening sentence?
Okay, rhetorical purpose. I'm not looking at what it means. I'm looking at why the author put it there. I find the phrase. It is the very first clause. Coral reefs, often called the rainforests of the sea, support approximately 25% of all marine species.
What is the author doing there?
The author places this evocative phrase right before delivering a massive, shocking statistic about biodiversity. The author is using an analogy we already understand. Everyone knows rainforests are packed with diverse life to explain something we might not be familiar with, the sheer staggering variety of life inside a reef.
So your conclusion is?
Therefore, the structural purpose is to illustrate the concept of high biodiversity.
This is how an expert navigates the test. It is highly systematic. It is deeply logical. And most importantly, it completely removes emotion, panic, and guesswork from the equation.
But of course, even with the absolute best playbook, things go wrong in the real world. Under the intense pressure of the clock, the glare of the monitor, and the knowledge that your graduate school admission is on the line, human nature takes over. Let's move into Section 6, Course Correction, and the 30-day blueprint. Let's talk about how to fix the most common real-world execution errors.
The first major error we need to address, and it is one that plagues high-achieving students, is overthinking. Analysis paralysis. You will find yourself debating between two incredibly similar answer choices for minutes on end.
This is the worst feeling.
You will read option B, then read option C, then read the text, then read B again. You go into a cognitive loop, and the clock just bleeds away.
How do you force yourself to break that loop? It is so hard to let go when you feel like the answer is right there.
You have to cultivate trust in your first verified instinct. If you have applied the strategy, if you scan the text, found the keyword, read the sentence, and found an answer that matches the criteria, you must select it and aggressively move on.
Just pick it and go.
Exactly. Overthinking almost always leads to second-guessing a correct answer and ultimately convincing yourself to choose a cleverly disguised trap.
Another massive error is ignoring the surrounding context, especially on vocabulary and inference questions. People get tunnel vision. They just stare at the highlighted word and ignore the rest of the sentence.
Context is everything. The test makers are assessing your ability to comprehend academic English in its natural habitat, not as isolated vocabulary words printed on flashcards. You must force your eyes to read the full sentence containing the highlighted detail and often the sentences immediately preceding and following it.
And then there is the danger of the almost correct answers. We touched on this during the Wright brothers example, but it bears repeating because it is so lethal. Test makers will change a single, solitary word to completely ruin an otherwise perfect answer choice.
It is a remarkably common and cruel tactic. An answer choice will perfectly, beautifully summarize a complex paragraph. It will hit all the right notes, but they will slip in the absolute modifier always, instead of the relative modifier sometimes.
Where they will use the word disprove instead of suggest.
Precisely. I mean, absolutely. Yeah. If you are reading too fast, propelled by panic, your brain will literally fill in the word you expect to see, not the word that is actually printed on the screen. You have to verify every single word in an answer choice against the passage. Treat every word as guilty until proven innocent.
So, knowing all these pitfalls, how do we actually train our brains to avoid them? The data we are looking at provides a really robust, structured 30-day training plan. And the core philosophy behind this plan is that consistency absolutely beats intensity.
It really does.
Sitting down for 30 to 45 minutes of highly focused strategic work every single day is vastly superior to burning yourself out on a frantic 5-hour practice marathon on a Sunday afternoon.
It is entirely about building cognitive muscle memory. You have to train your brain the way an athlete trains their body. In week 1, the foundation phase, your goal is simply to master 2 question types a day. Do not worry about the clock yet. Turn the timer off.
Just learn the mechanics.
Right. Just internalize the specific rules. Focus on factual and negative factual one day. Focus on inference and rhetorical purpose the next. You need to know the mechanical steps cold.
Then, in week 2, you move to the application phase. You start tackling full, dense academic passages. But here is the most critical part of the entire 30-day process when you get a question wrong, and you will get them wrong. You do not just glance at the correct answer, say, oh, okay, and move on to the next test.
You have to perform an autopsy.
Yes. You have to stop and perform an autopsy on that failure. You have to analyze why you got it wrong. Which of the specific mistakes did you fall for? Did you overthink? Did you ignore the context clues? Did you fall for a true but minor detail in the prose summary?
That is the secret to rapid improvement. You learn exponentially more from a deeply analyzed failure than you do from a lucky success. Moving into week 3, the focus shifts to speed and pressure. This is when you turn the timer back on.
The stressful part.
Your goal is to hit an 80% accuracy rate on those highly learnable foundational factual and vocabulary questions while under strict time pressure. You have to learn what 90 seconds actually feels like.
And finally, week 4 is all about optimization and building mental stamina. This is where you take full-length simulated practice tests. Sitting and staring at complex text for hours is physically and mentally exhausting. You will experience brain fog.
You have to train your brain to maintain focus and execute strategies when you are in hour 3 and all you want to do is go to sleep.
And throughout all 4 of those weeks, there are daily lifestyle habits that will accelerate your progress. Reading complex academic articles every single day from publications like Scientific American, The Economist, or National Geographic gets your brain accustomed to the unique rhythm and structure of academic prose.
That passive exposure is huge. Additionally, actively learning 5 to 10 new AWL vocabulary items daily is crucial. But you must learn them within the context of full sentences, not just memorizing sterile dictionary definitions.
And we cannot ignore the physical component getting enough sleep. The research explicitly notes that physical fatigue destroys reading comprehension. It shatters your working memory. You cannot out-strategize a severely sleep-deprived brain.
It is scientifically undeniable. Your cognitive load capacity, your ability to hold multiple pieces of information in your head simultaneously while tracking a pronoun, drops precipitously when you are tired. Proper sleep hygiene is not a luxury. It is a fundamental component of your study plan.
So as we wrap up this massive, comprehensive deep dive, let's firmly recap the core takeaways you need to carry with you into the testing center. The most fundamental paradigm shift you need to make right now is realizing that this is a strategy test, a locating information test, not just a measure of your English fluency.
That's the biggest mindset change.
You must always return to the passage for your answers, leave your personal outside knowledge at the door. Use the systematic elimination method relentlessly when you are unsure, and most importantly, trust the process. A disciplined, structured 30-day approach can absolutely transform your score.
If you walk into that room and approach the screen like a cool analytical detective rather than a panicked, overwhelmed student, the entire experience changes. The test stops being a monster. It starts becoming a puzzle you know how to solve.
I want to leave you with a provocative thought, something to really mull over that extends way beyond the confines of a testing center. We have spent this entire deep dive talking about how to objectively separate major structural arguments from minor distracting details.
Literally directed at that.
We've discussed how to ruthlessly distinguish between directly stated facts and logical inferences, and how to spot deceptive, almost correct phrasing designed to manipulate you.
And if you step back and think about it, those are the exact analytical skills required to navigate the complexities of the modern world.
Spot on. Think about how mastering these specific, highly analytical reading skills might permanently change the way you consume your daily newsfeed. Think about how it might change the way you evaluate bold scientific claims made on social media, or how you dissect emotionally charged political arguments in an era defined by information overload and misinformation.
It really makes you see things differently.
The ability to strip away the rhetorical noise, to locate the core empirical evidence, and to identify logical fallacies isn't just about passing a standardized test to get into a university. It is about becoming a sharper, more critical, and far more resilient thinker in your everyday life.
It truly is a superpower in the information age. Once you learn how to read like an architect, you never look at a building the same way again.
Thank you so much for joining us on this extensive journey today. Please mention, like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel.